air.
I'm Roger Mudd, NBC News, Washington. The Kremlin, using language almost heartless in tone, today refused to accept responsibility for the shooting down of the Korean airliner, but said that in the leading circles of the Soviet Union, they expressed their regret in connection with human victims. In its statement from TASS, Moscow said its fighter pilots had fired warning shots at the Korean 747 and suggested the airliner was on a spying mission. Here's Steve Mallory in the Soviet capital.
Soviet television broadcast an official statement from the Soviet news agency TASS tonight, reporting for the first time that a Soviet fighter had fired warning shots with tracer shells at a plane that crossed into Soviet airspace. TASS said, soon after this, the intruder plane left the limits of Soviet airspace and continued its flight toward the Sea of Japan. TASS implied that the aircraft was on a spying mission. TASS said, further reports emanating from the United States provide increasingly more grounds to consider that the itinerary and the nature of the flight were not accidental. In the light of these facts, the intrusion into airspace by the mentioned plane cannot be regarded in any other way than a pre-planned act. It was obviously thought possible to attain special intelligence aims without hindrance using civilian planes as cover. If it were an ordinary flight of a civilian aircraft, which was under continuous observation, then why were steps not taken from the American side to end the gross violations of Soviet airspace and get the plane back on an international flight route? TASS criticized dirty insinuations being made about the Soviet Union, but did not say what the insinuations were. There is reason to believe that those who organized this provocation had deliberately desired an aggravation of the international situation by striving to smear the Soviet Union, to sow hostility and cast aspersions on Soviet peace-loving policy. TASS said this is illustrated by slanderous statements from U.S. President Ronald Reagan. TASS said in the leading circles of the Soviet Union, regret is expressed over the loss of human life. This entire affair has to be somewhat confusing to average Soviet citizens since the controversy has not been reported here. Soviet citizens don't even know that a Korean airliner carrying 269 passengers has been lost. They don't know that Western governments have accused their country of downing the plane. Steve Mallory, NBC News, Moscow.
The U.S. Embassy in Moscow called the TASS report preposterous. Secretary of State Schultz accused the Soviet Union tonight of covering up the facts. And President Reagan's press secretary said on Air Force One that U.S. intelligence agencies are certain the Koreans were not using that airliner for spying. The president returned to Washington from his California vacation late today. Chris Wallace reports.
For Ronald Reagan, the downing of the Korean airliner is confirmation of his long-held anti-Soviet views. Today, as he left California to deal with the international incident, the president expressed his outrage.
What can we think of a regime that so broadly trumpets its vision of peace and global disarmament, and yet so callously and quickly commits a terrorist act to sacrifice the lives of innocent human beings? What can be said about Soviet credibility when they so flagrantly lie about such a heinous act?
But as Mr. Reagan headed for Washington on Air Force One, aides indicated the harsh words may not be matched by tough actions. They expect the U.S. to continue arms talks with the Soviets because the stakes are too high to cut them off. They say Secretary of State Schultz will go ahead with his long-scheduled talks next week with Soviet Foreign Minister Gromyko. And they have little enthusiasm for a U.S. trade embargo against the Soviets. Presidential spokesman Larry Speaks knocked down hard that Soviet charge the Korean plane was on a spy mission. Our intelligence community is adamant there was no U.S. involvement, Speaks said, and they're certain the Koreans were not using that aircraft for intelligence gathering. Late today, the president returned to the White House to meet with senior national security officials this evening and top congressional leaders on Sunday to discuss how to respond to the Soviet attack. Administration sources say they would prefer some international action in which the U.S. would be a part, such as a worldwide ban on Soviet airline flights. U.S.-Soviet relations had been improving recently, with new agreements to sell American grain and pipeline equipment to the Soviet Union. While Reagan aides say that key contacts will continue, they emphasize that the Soviet response to this latest incident will determine the tone of relations between the two countries. Chris Wallace, NBC News, at Andrews Air Force Base.
The Soviet Union is suggesting tonight that the United States knew all along the Korean airliner was in Soviet airspace and did nothing about it. Marvin Kalb at the State Department, could it be that the United States and or Korea was using that airliner for surveillance?
Roger, I can't be absolutely certain about South Korea, though there is no indication that the Koreans were involved in espionage in this case. But from all top officials, the word is very strong and very indignant. The United States was not involved in any kind of espionage, and they say that the Russians are attempting to cover this up because they simply don't want to admit what is called the inhuman fact that they shot the plane down.
Are we on our way into another Cold War?
Well, there has been over the last couple of days an increasing escalation of accusations in both directions. So on the surface, one could feel that that is happening. But at the same time, there is an almost breaking mechanism in the State Department bureaucracy that is holding back the White House and not allowing perhaps the president's instincts to respond very strongly to the Russians to work in that direction. They are trying, as Chris Wallace just said, to keep relations on a somewhat even keel, though it's quite clear they've been set back.
Thank you, Marvin. We'll continue our reporting on the Korean airliner story in just a moment.
Twelfth man on three. 1, 2, 3, 4.
My favorite time of day is night. I love curling up with a rich cup of coffee. You think coffee and sleep don't mix? They do if it's High Point. It's decaffeinated, and the flavor's marvelous. You see, High Point has a special way of capturing flavor, deep brewed flavor. It's a coffee lover's dream.
Deep brewed flavor makes High Point the coffee lover's decaffeinated.
Right now, when you buy certain Teed-Attic insulation, you'll get more than high-quality, energy-saving fiberglass. You'll also get a $1 rebate. In fact, you'll get $1 back for each of the first 40 rolls of certain Teed R19 you buy. Of course, an offer this good can't last forever, so look for the Certain Teed Buck-a-Bundle rebate display at participating dealers now. You'll save money, saving energy.
No, it's just my keys.
Could you empty all of your pockets?
Wait a minute, Stu, do you have the traveler's checks?
No.
No?
I thought you had
I got news for you. I can't find them.
It was your keys.
Yeah, fine. Thank you. What's the problem?
We've lost our traveler's checks.
You can get a refund to the American Express machine down the hall.
No,
But they weren't American Express.
Oh, they weren't. What time's your flight?
You know, nobody but American Express can give refunds at traveler's check machines in most major U.S. airports. Don't leave home without them.
The United Nations Security Council met in emergency session this afternoon with South Korea demanding an apology and full compensation from the Soviet Union for all 269 people shot down, with the U.S. denouncing Moscow for lying openly, and with the Soviet Union saying the meeting was unjustifiable and unnecessary. Here's Bob Jameson.
As a crowd of several hundred Korean Americans burned the Soviet flag outside the United Nations, demanding the Security Council condemn Moscow, inside, the United States delivered its harshest attack on the Russians here since the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Let us call the crime for what clearly it is. Wanton, calculated, deliberate murder.
Lichtenstein, his words filled with cold anger, said U.S. information that the Soviets had tracked and then destroyed the jetliner was irrefutable. He repeated intercepted transmissions from the Soviet pilot scornfully for Russian Ambassador Richard Ovinikov.
I must defer to our Soviet colleague. It may well be that I am not adequately or properly translating the Russian, but then he has all of the facts in his possession.
Lichtenstein said the Soviets' response to the tragedy lacked even a trace of contrition.
In its refusal to admit the truth, it is lying, openly, brazenly, knowingly. In so doing, it is ironically showing its true face to the world.
Ovinikov's response was to read the latest TASS account of what the Soviets said happened. He rejected the U.S. version of the tragedy and accused the United States of provoking the incident.
The U.S. administration wishes to obtain yet another pretext to justify its irresponsible policy through the preparation for nuclear war.
In all, a dozen other countries were to address the Security Council, but there will be no concrete action against the Soviets since they have the power to veto any resolution. Bob Jimison, NBC News, New York.
The administration's permanent representative to the UN, Jean Kirkpatrick, is vacationing in Morocco. Her office says it hopes she will be back by Sunday. Near Sakhalin Island, where the plane went down, the Japanese Navy continues to hunt for wreckage. And in South Korea, many people had their worst fears confirmed. We have two reports, beginning with Don Oliver on the search.
The search for debris or any sign of the Korean airline jumbo jet has been hampered because the Soviet Union has ignored all requests to look in its territorial waters. The Japanese Maritime Safety Agency did find an oil slick on the water some 40 miles from the Soviet island of Sakhalin. The oil specimens are to be tested in the next few hours to determine if they contain jet fuel. There will also be a continuing search by Japanese planes and American AWACS flown from the U.S. Air Base on Okinawa. Relatives of the 28 Japanese on board the plane are expected to fly to the northern island of Hokkaido to await further word on the fate of the plane. It is almost inconceivable there could be any survivors. Japanese fishermen who were off the coast of Sakhalin Island have told officials that they saw 2 or 3 bright flashes in the sky about 3:30 Thursday morning, followed by some loud bangs. They saw a falling fireball and then smelled what they thought was either gasoline or heavy oil. They were not close enough to see the fireball enter the water. Don Oliver, NBC News, Tokyo.
Families of the dead passengers gathered to grieve at home. But other Koreans expressed their fury openly. High school students interrupted their studies for an anti-Soviet rally. Other spontaneous demonstrations were scattered throughout Seoul. One man wrote a message in his own blood, asking why his country must suffer such disasters. Government workers lowered the Korean flag to half-staff. Officials at the American embassy here followed suit. Throughout the day, special supplements to the newspapers reported new details of the attack. Koreans tried to carry on today, but their attention was focused on the fate of the plane. South Korean President Chun Doo-hwan called the attack a barbarous act. His foreign minister called for punishment of the airmen involved in the shooting and demanded an apology from the Soviet Union. But an apology is unlikely. The Soviet Union and South Korea do not maintain diplomatic relations. So feelings toward the Soviet Union in this already staunchly anti-communist nation will certainly harden even more. Stephen Frazier, NBC News, Seoul.
NBC News will broadcast a special report on the downing of the Korean plane tonight at 11:30, 10:30 Central Time.
Bronchial asthma sufferer Eunice Bailey can't get enough air into her lungs to blow out a simple match.
For occasional attacks, try Primatene Mist.
In the lungs, Primatene Mist opens clogged breathing tubes, relaxes bronchial spasms, and in as fast as 15 seconds restores free breathing.
I feel very good. It's nice to be able to breathe.
Primatene Mist, the fastest type relief known. Primatene tablets contains the asthma reliever doctors recommend most.
The paint went on like satin, and it went up the wall, and it became beautiful.
Amazing things happen when you paint with Benjamin Moore.
Benjamin Moore was exciting to me because I could pick the colors that I wanted. There must be 900 yellows. You pick your color, and then they mix it there for you. And then I went home and painted. And the greatest thing about it is it glowed.
Make painting easier. Talk to an expert. Your Benjamin Moore dealer.
Do you know what it is to sit in a house that glows?
Hurricane Alicia batters Texas.
I started screaming. It was like you were in shock. You saw your home destroyed.
All-state update. Fast, fair claim service.
Thursday morning, Hurricane Alicia came through. This tree fell through our roof. It caused the ceiling in our bathroom and in our son's bedroom to fall on the floor.
We got in touch with Allstate on Friday. By Saturday, we had settled up with Allstate, and they gave us our money, and by Monday, we had the house being rebuilt.
We're in very good hands with Allstate.
Yes, we are.
Israeli Foreign Minister Yitzhak Shamir today won his party's nomination to be the next prime minister, defeating David Levy by a healthy margin, 436 to 302. Shamir went on to win the support of the other parties in the ruling coalition. He says he hopes to succeed the retiring Menachem Begin in 2 or 3 days. Martin Fletcher has prepared this backgrounder on what we can expect from Shamir.
Yitzhak Shamir's success is a victory for the old guard. Like Menachem Begin, Shamir is a former guerrilla fighter, and he's sworn to follow Begin's policies.
I don't hope there will be a change. I think we will continue the same policy, the policy of Prime Minister Begin.
In the fight against the British in Palestine, Shamir left Begin's underground army. He thought Begin too soft. Shamir led the Stern Gang, the most extreme group in the Jewish underground. Twice the British jailed Shamir, twice he escaped. After Israel was founded, Shamir joined the Secret Service and only entered politics in 1970. Through total loyalty to Menachem Begin, he quickly rose through the ranks. Former Defense Minister Ariel Sharon is another winner in the political upheaval here. His popularity in Israel's poorer areas is clear. Sharon can still pull in the votes. Just 6 months after an Israeli inquiry found him indirectly responsible for the Beirut massacres, Sharon has emerged as a power broker here, an important factor in swinging the party behind Shamir. Shamir has said Sharon should have an important role in the next government. Israel's new prime minister will lead a country in crisis. Lebanon. The army will pull back to its new line in Lebanon any day, but that isn't enough to satisfy Israelis fed up with taking casualties in Lebanon. The West Bank. It's quickly becoming absorbed into Israel as more Jews settle there, but that keeps tension high among Palestinian Arabs, another constant headache for the government. The occupation of Lebanon and the West Bank is sapping morale at home as well as straining the economy. The economy is the biggest domestic problem. Israel's inflation rate this year is running at 160%. Israel owes so much money that most of its aid from the United States is spent paying off its foreign debt.
Shamir's biggest problem, though, will simply be to stay in power. Under Begin, the coalition was shaky enough. Under Shamir, who has none of Begin's personality, the coalition could well collapse within months, possibly leading to early elections. Martin Fletcher, NBC News, Tel Aviv.
The government of Chad said today its soldiers turned back attacks by 3,000 Libyan-backed rebels who used tanks and rocket launchers against a government outpost at Chaluba. Chad claimed its troops killed 800 rebels and captured 600. Today's fighting was the first in 3 weeks. French soldiers in Chad were not involved.
You're irascible, you're a little cantankerous, and we don't agree with you on a lot of things, but we're going to vote for you.
The amount of money you have to invest has little to do with the questions you wish to ask. And the more serious you are as an investor, the more questions you have to ask, which is why it's critical you have someone you can talk with. As respected advisors to the serious investor, we at Shearson American Express recommend you invest your time before you invest your money. Shearson American Express and the serious investor. Minds over money.
The Panadol Discovery.
I landed in London with a splitting headache. Was I hurting? I went to the airport shop and said, "Give me as strong a pain reliever as you've got that won't upset my stomach." The man gave me Panadol. 2 tablets are 1,000 milligrams strong. I never heard of Panadol, but by the time I reached my hotel, my headache was gone. Now Panadol's made here in America.
Discover world-proven Panadol, as strong a pain reliever as you can buy, and it won't upset your stomach.
If you're running low on Glidden, you'll be happy to know that Kmart is now stocked up. To celebrate, we put Glidden Spread Wall on sale at half price, just $4.94 a gallon.
Wait a minute, that's it.
Oh, that's Glidden Cloud Blue.
$4.94 a gallon.
What's this?
$4.94 a gallon.
This one, what is that? And
Glidden, half price at Kmart, not half bad.
what's this?
Mustard. I had a hot dog for lunch.
Kmart, we got it, and we got it good.
Senator Henry Jackson died last night. He was stricken with a heart attack at his home in Everett, Washington. He had been in the Congress since 1941 and was in his 6th Senate term. Until the Democrats lost control of the Senate, he was chairman of the Energy Committee and was a strong voice on the Armed Services Committee. John Hart prepared this obituary.
I'm just an ordinary guy. I'm the country boy from Everett.
That's the kind of modesty a man of achievement can afford. Everett being Everett, Washington, where the bob-haired son of a Norwegian cement seller grew up in the shadow of Mount Pilchuck in Snohomish County. The kind of names that stand out, like Scoop, the nickname his sister gave him after a comic strip character he reminded her of. The achievements beginning for a small-town prosecutor who was so hard on bootleggers they were happy to see him on to higher office in Washington, where, after a decade in the House, he found himself starting a Senate career on Joseph McCarthy's Communist Hunting Committee. A passionate anti-communist himself, Jackson thought the threat came from outside the country and quietly undermined McCarthy's credibility. Another name he got was Cold War liberal.
I say that the liberal tradition is in the pursuit of the truth, wherever it may lead one. And if we want to maintain the peace, we must take the hard, tough line.
An unwavering hawk, he championed the war in Vietnam. This hawk was a humane liberal. The Jackson Amendment was aimed at forcing Moscow to let more Jews leave Russia. He embraced Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, engineered passage of sweeping environmental protections. Running for the presidential nomination, he lost twice, too much the ordinary boy from Everett. Yesterday, back from a trip to China, he held a news conference to denounce the Soviets for shooting down the Korean airliner when a chest pain interrupted him.
Got a cold from the Orient that I'm trying to get rid of, and I didn't think I'd survive this, but you were very kind.
12 hours later, the heart attack had killed him. He was 71. John Hart, NBC News.
The Labor Department reported today that unemployment for August remained at 9.5% for the second straight month. White House spokesman Larry Speake said today's figures point to a steadily improving jobs picture. But the AFL-CIO said there is no recovery and that because so many had been out of work so long, only 36% of the nearly 11 million unemployed were receiving unemployment compensation. The rate for black male teenagers aged 16 to 19 hit a record 56.8%. Texas A&M will go to almost any length to win a football game. So tomorrow, when it plays its opening game, the team will unleash an old and honorable weapon, the 12th man. Robert Elliott explains.
At Texas A&M, football is serious business, but not as serious as something called Aggie spirit. It's frenzied. The key to this spirit is the 12th man tradition. Theoretically, every member of the student body stands ready to put on a uniform and fight for the glory of A&M. That hasn't happened since 1922. For 61 years, the 12th man has been a statue and a source of moral support. But this year, the Aggie spirit has gone beyond just bonfires, pep rallies, and trombones. You see, they've moved the symbolic 12th man out of the stands and onto the playing field. The result, an all-volunteer Dirty Dozen Suicide Squad. Go! The Suicide Squad covers kickoff returns, and talent isn't as important as a total disregard for one's body.
It gives you something to think about when you're back receiving a kickoff and knowing that you've got, 10 people that are maybe crazy coming down to hit you.
But wait a minute, these are just 5'10", 180-pound average guys. What could possibly motivate engineering student Jeff Blair to leave the safety of the classroom to bang heads? Like the others, he has a dream.
To run downfield, make the first hit on the ball carry, and cause fumble.
Saturday's opener is against California. Last year, last play, they dazzled their way to a TD past the entire Stanford squad, 3 tubas in the saxophone section. But the Aggies aren't worried. They say they've got a better band. The kamikaze spirit is ready, but many wonder if their bodies are. You see, at A&M, they're used to polishing the 12th man, not putting him back together. Robert Elliott, NBC News, College Station, Texas.
Ace is the place.
Ace is the place for best buys of the month, like the original Vice Grip 7-inch locking pliers. Can be used as clamp, wrench, wire cutter, and more. Best buy price at just $4.44.
Another Best Buy is this Proctor Silex toaster. Chrome finish with almond accents. Easy to clean. Fingertip control gives the right shade of toast. Only $9.99.
Best buys of the month and one thing more. Ace is the place with the help of hardware man.
Hey, what's with the sourpuss? My dentures. I hate the taste after soaking. That tablet taste.
Sourpuss? Meet Denture Gel.
Introducing new Denture Gel, the first gel toothpaste just for dentures. Powerful stain-removing cleaners plus mouthwash ingredients leave dentures clean with a minty freshness you can taste.
My dentures do taste minty fresh. New denture gel sure beats tablet taste.
And that sour puss.
NBC News covers the world 7 days a week. Starting this week, join Connie Chung on Saturdays and Chris Wallace on Sundays. Go where the news is. NBC Nightly News.
I'm looking for jeans that stay blue.
Try Dress Blues by Lee.
You bet I will. Fit like a glove.
Mike, all you have to do is look for the patch.
Lee Jeans, the brand that fits.
This is the last week Washington has to itself each year, the week before Labor Day. The president is now back in the city, and before too many more days, the Congress will have finished another of its district work periods, and the justices of the court will be returning. But this week, those who live and work here have had Washington to themselves, to marvel at its quiet beauty. Howard Baker, the Tennessee Republican who is leaving Congress after 16 years, said recently on the Senate floor, Mr. President, I hope members will take a moment to take a peek at this magnificent city. It is a remarkable sight, most especially the lawns, the gardens, the trees, and the flowers that are kept up by the National Park Service. As I looked out the car window, I saw the marigolds suddenly appear in full flower. They were the same height and shape to within a centimeter, and were lined up like they were marching to their first day of school, all polished and dressed and ready for the season. And, Mr. President, the geraniums are there. I do not understand how you can have virtually acres of geraniums, all bearing what appear to be the same number of blossoms, of precisely the same shade of red, spaced so precisely and accurately. Next week, perhaps, there won't be the time to look at Washington as carefully and as lovingly as Howard Baker did, because the powerful and the mighty will have returned. But for those who took the trouble to look about during this last, almost private week in Washington, it was hard not to be beguiled, hard not to discover that even in the absence of power, the capital city carries its own strength and majesty. That's Nightly News for Friday. Tom Brokaw will be back on Monday. I'm Roger Mudd in Washington. Good night from all of us at NBC News.
Death at the bottom of the world. Only one man can save them, but will he do it in time?
How much more can we take?
Gray Lady Down with Charlton Heston and Christopher Reeve tonight. Michael Landon returns to Walnut Grove to save his son from drugs. He's an addict. The morphine. It's a special 2-hour Little House, Monday.
Coming up next on the scene at 6.